Now to retrieve the items, or the list items for our control, we're going to iterate through the checkbox list items collection. So to do that, we need a variable that's going to represent the current item we're working with. So we also need a variable to store the string that we're going to build up of any checked items. So I create two variables. One will be dim stir selected items as string. I'm going to set it equal to blank for now because that's a good programming practice. Then I'm going to type dim li as list item. List item is the control that we added to the page. If we go to source, there's your list item right there. See, it correlates. So the ASP list item here correlates to the list item here in the source. Now that little squiggly line means we haven't used the variable yet. So they're just trying to help us keep our code concise. Now the next thing we need to do is iterate through each of the controls. And the easiest way to do that is by using a programming structure called for each. So what we'll say is for each list item in, and I need the name of my control, which was CBL example, and I need to work with the items collection. This takes practice. It's something you can't expect to just remember the first time. So through a combination of taking notes, trying it yourself, reading examples online, it's just a gradual process to learn these things. Now when I hit enter, .NET helps me, and they add a next statement. So I can loop. This code would work as is. It wouldn't do anything we'd see, but it would in fact loop through each of the list items. So what I need to do now is find out if a list item is selected. And I know from experience that a list item has a selected property. So I'm going to say if li.selected equals true, then do something. We want to see the output. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our string selected items variable. We'll put it right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to add it to itself. We'd overwrite it if we didn't. So we need to assign the current value, whatever's in there right now, because we're looping. And we're going to use a concatenation character, which means we're going to add a string to another string. So I put an @ sign, and I'm going to put a little space here because we want it to appear nice. And then I'll say and li, which is in our loop, that's that list item we're working with, li dot text, because that's what the user sees in the page. So now we're saying that we're adding the text of the list item to whatever's already in our string. Now this will work. We'll build a string of all the list items we chose, but you'll never see it on the page because we still have to populate that list item, or I'm sorry, the label control. So now what I do is I type me.lbl checkbox list example.text, and we set the text equal to that string we just worked with, selected items. So now I'll save my page and I'll run it. This might seem a little daunting to you right now, but practice it and I'm sure it'll come together. It's just a matter of trial and error. So now we can see that our drop-down list still works. It still populates this option. We choose a checkbox item. You see it appear there. We choose another. We choose another. We remove one. It's all working. So it's keeping track of what people have chosen. So what we're going to do is see how that works. I'll close the page one more time, and I'll set a code breakpoint on the for statement. So now what I'll do is I'll run our example. We're going to navigate between the page and the source now because we're debugging. I'll choose a checkbox. That throws us into the event handler. And you can see that this variable is blank. This variable is nothing because we're not working with a list yet. And we're just about to start. We're saying for each list item, still nothing, in the items collection, which is populated. If you see all that to the right, it's a real object that you can work with in code. If you see a nothing, it hasn't been assigned anything yet. It'll cause an error if you try to use it for anything. So now I'm going to hit an icon to step into my code, and suddenly the list item has a property. So since this line to this line here, in one line of code, it was associated with the first item in the list. It is selected. So we'll go to the next line of code. And now this is still blank, but it won't be after we hit the step into key. It now has a value because it did everything we said. It took the text property of the list item, it took a space, and it put it all in there for us. So now when I click my icon again, it'll loop. it's going to go back and say for the next one, if it's selected, it's true. And now it's not selected, so it skips the concatenation line. Same for the next one. So we only selected one item. I just set the label control to that value, and the page shows what we chose. So I'll choose another checkbox, go back through. Now you'll see true happened twice. The first one's true, the second one is false. Nothing happens. The third one's true. The value's set. Life is good. And we have both displayed. The only control we haven't worked with now is the radio button list. This one is a bit easier than the checkbox. There's no way you're going to choose more than one of these radio buttons if they're set up correctly. So in this case, all we have to do, we'll close our window, is add an event handler for the radio button list. And I'll do it again from here. I'll choose the control, and I'll choose the event. And now I'll set its label control. I'll say me.lbl radio button list example.text equals me.rblexample.selectedItem.text. And I'll run the example. Now, this won't work, and I'm hoping you can remember why. I wish we could talk a little back and forth on this video, because there's a reason this isn't working and that these are. Now we're in our debug again, so I'll just skip that with a step out button. But it's because we didn't set the auto postback property of that control. So that's what I'll do right now. I'll first remove that breakpoint because we don't need it at the moment. I'll save my project, which is always a good idea. And then I'm going to go and set the auto postback property. So we go back to our page. I find my radio button list, and I add a property to it. I add auto postback equals true again. Now when we run our page, we can choose a radio button list item, and it'll tell us what we chose. Pretty cool. So we just worked with all three controls. We've seen how similar they are, how consistent they are, and how you only have to occasionally vary from the basic approach for special cases like a checkbox list. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it's helpful to you. Thanks.